Oh, hi there. Right. I think this is where we were last time we talked, right? A lot's happened. Things are moving along, but it's been busy. I've had a lot of life going on. Let's get you caught up. After all that, I'm kind of exhausted. But where we last left it, the crank was installed, heads were getting cleaned up, we were ready to do some valves. So let's go ahead and jump in and see where things are at now. Using a lint-free cloth and a little bit of WD-40, getting in and cleaning out the bores, making sure there's nothing left in there. You just can't be too clean with this. We get the pistons now, make sure they're all lined up and in the right order. I'm using the same pistons and the same bores. Keep in mind the pistons and the rods, they're sighted. So 1, 2, and 3 are one part number, 4, 5, 6 are a second part number, and make sure they get oriented correctly. We'll go through that in a minute. Now the rings have to be freely moving in the ringlands, which means all the carbon that, of course, this engine builds up in there has to be cleaned out. In this case, I'm using a pick. Sometimes I'd use a little piece of broken ring. Soak and Barrowmans will work as well. Most of the pistons I could clean without taking the rings off. I could just get around them like this and everything was good. Others I did need to grab my ring pliers, take them off, clean it up, and put it back together. On this engine, the pistons matter as far as which side of the V they go on. This piston, if you look right at the top, you'll see it on yours as well. You have a 1-3. That means it's a right side piston. It goes in cylinders 1, 2, or 3. The other ones say 4-6. That's the left side, 4, 5, 6. Be sure you get the right piston on the right side. When you go to put the pistons in, WIS is going to tell you there's a little arrow on there, and that arrow should point to the opposite cylinder bank. So if we look at this piston, the arrow is it's right there, and it points that way. So if you point that towards the opposing cylinder bank like this, and drop it in, you're going to find that your bearing is going to look like that, and the crank kind of looks like not that. So you're going to have a problem. I don't know if it's WIS, if I'm reading it wrong. I mean, I don't know, but much easier way to tell when we kind of go and look at this. If we tail over and we look at the head, which is over here, you can see basically the size and the spacing of the valves for intake side and exhaust side a little different. So the exhaust is right there, a little closer together, right? Than you have on the intake side. So those are the exhaust valves, those are the intake valves, and if we look at the piston, we can see the little dishes for the valves. Those are the close together ones. That's the exhaust side. Go in here like this. We need to align our piston ring so the front ring goes to the front. Then we go 120 degrees for the second ring, and the oil control ring goes 120 degrees from that, so about right. Now we want to go ahead and lubricate everything here. Just put a little oil on it. The cylinder. Now, we need to be really careful that we do not let the bottom of the rod touch the cylinder wall. So we are going to lower this in very gently. Dude, you're putting it in the wrong way. That's backwards.
No, we're going to rotate it around so that we're putting it in the right way.
See, that's better.
And now we're going to lower it down very gently. All right. Now, our piston is sitting right here. He's lined up. The piston ring compressor is sitting on the head. All right. Now, pressure.
As you're getting the piston to go in, it's very important to make sure that that piston ring compression is nice and tight and
and then also that you kind of hold down on the piston ring compressor while you're pushing the piston in so it doesn't shoot back up. Now in this case, I actually managed to get the connecting rod just sort of in the wrong spot down there. It didn't get the bearing surface or anything like that banging against anything, but it kind of wedged itself. So I had to go down with a little rubber mallet and a piece of wood and kind of knock it out of the spot there. So just a little bit of a learning experience. But once that was done, lined it all up, get it nice and tight, just like that. Make sure that thing is really got those rings compressed so that they'll slide right on down into the piston. And then, as it turns out, I really didn't need to do it this way. They'll really just push in. I didn't hit it very hard at all with that hammer. I'm using a hammer and a piece of PVC pipe right in the crown of the piston, and just a rubber mallet, and just knocking it in. It honestly did not take any effort at all. Really can just do it with a couple thumbs and just push it right down on it. Once you've done that, now you've got to go down and get the bearings installed. So you want to make sure that you're only lubricating the outside of the bearing. So between the bearing and the connecting rod, no oil, no lube. But go ahead and just slide it down in there, and that bearing half will snap right into place inside that connecting rod. That's what I'm doing right here. And once that's in place, we'll drop a little assembly lube on it, because the surface of the bearing to the journal on the crank needs to have some lubrication on it. You don't want that initial start to be real dry. So that assembly lube's nice and sticky. It'll stay in place, and make sure that when we first go to start it up, it'll be good and lubricated. It won't destroy anything just by virtue of hitting the starter. It can be a little tricky to get that bearing to slide right into place, and then once it's slid into place, to kind of snap it in. Of course, you're fighting the fact that the piston wants to slide back out on top of this point, right? I'm kind of holding it, popping that bearing in with my thumbs. Then once that's in, again, put the assembly lube on, like I said before. There it goes. Kind of getting a little low on it, so it takes a little bit of effort to squeeze some out, but that's all right. Once that's done, the piston's going to slide back up and sit on the connecting rod. And the bearing then also needs to be put into the top half of the shell. You can see right there, laptop there. We've got the other half of the bearing there.
Journal done as well.
Yep, so get that journal all covered in assembly lube. I don't really think there's a problem using too much of it. The bearing gets slid in. And there we go.
Okay.
And now we push the piston up. You can see the halves of the connecting rod are meeting each other.
Okay.
And then we just got to bolt it up. Put those bolts on. Now, I have forgotten an important step here. Those bolts actually have to be lubricated, so pull them back out. They want the threads and then the shoulders lubricated, because these are torque to yield bolts. We're going to be stretching these things out. So without that lubrication, we can damage the threads as we do that. So get them good, gooped up with oil, toss them in there, spin them around.
There's 132.76 inch-pounds. Now this is the short arm, which is this guy over here. So he goes to 15 Newton meters. All right. Now the other one goes to 20 Newton meters. It's 177.01. All right. Good. Now we go to 30 Newton meters. Here we go. 30 Newton meters on the short arm. All right. And now the long arm goes to 40 Newton meters. Okay, and now we're 40 Newton meters on the short arm stage. Boom. All right, now we take it another 90 degrees on the short arm. Okay, 90 degrees. $90. All right, and then the next, take the short arm. 90 degrees. Ugh, 90 degrees. Now this guy goes 90 degrees. Ugh. The number one piston is officially installed.
Alright, so just discovered this. I don't know, I must have dropped this at some point and I don't remember it. I can't fathom how this could have happened in the engine. And this guy here, he's got a big old dent in him. So I'm not really feeling this piston, so I think we're going to have to replace him. Which is kind of annoying because I probably could have, for a lot less money, gotten a complete piston, rod, new rings already ready to go instead of buying all three of those components individually, but oh well. Son of a gun. Crazy, huh? Alright, well, we'll continue on with the other pistons just so that we can continue to make a little headway here. We're going to move to the number 4 piston. Just kind of working our way down here. I don't think we really want to sit here and watch all 6 pistons go in. It's all basically the same. This is the number 4. Line up the rings, apply a little bit of oil to lubricate it up. Go ahead and put the piston ring compressor on, making sure not to turn the rings when you do so. Get it good and tight on there. And once that's on, we'll just take it over, put a little assembly lube on the wrist pin, drop it into the cylinder very gently, line it up, make sure the far end isn't going to hit anything, tap it in, lube up the bearing, get the bearing in place, and get the other bearing lubed up, get it in place. There it is. No big deal. Bring the 2 parts of the connecting rod together. Lube up the connecting rod bolts and torque them in the pattern provided in WIS. Give them torque down. And once they're torqued down, we stretch them out with our angle gauge. And the rest are going to be just like that. The next thing we need to talk about here is this kind of mess. This is just a part of what came out of one of the heads. This is just carbon and gunk and crud that's built up in there. It's ugly. It's nasty. So what I had to do is just go through and clean the heads out, clean the intake manifolds out, and it's just a mess in there. I'm not going to treat you to the whole process. It was laborious and annoying and involved a lot of soaking in some oil eater and a lot of hosing down and a lot of spraying with simple green. It was a lot of work, but I was able to get them all cleaned out. So I've taken up enough of your time for now. We're going to go ahead, wrap this up, and the next time we come out and do this, we're going to go ahead and get the heads disassembled and get them all cleaned up and ready to go, kind of walk through that process. I'll hopefully have that video up here relatively soon. I've got plenty of videos stored up. There's more progress made that I haven't documented yet, but we're getting there, and we're getting there as quickly as we can. Until next time.